And welcome back. These shows that we're going to be doing, as I said, I've said a few times throughout the last few days, these are all filled with favorite things of this year. And I knew right away that our guest today was a favorite thing. I shouldn't say thing, favorite person. I'm going to try to intro him like he intros most of his videos. Hello, I'm Jason. I'm a talk show host. And hello, he's Matt Eicheldinger, who is an author. Wait, let me make that better, Matt.
Yeah.
New York Times best-selling author and teacher. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, who'd have thought, right?
Who would have thought? Sticky Notes is the newest book right there.
Yep.
And then which one, let's get these in order. Which one was the first one, Matt?
The first one was this one, Matt Sprouts and the Curse of 10 Broken Toes, which is based on my life.
Okay.
And then this one is Matt Sprouts and the Day Nor at the Sun, which is the sequel. And then I've got a third one coming out and more books on the way.
Oh,
They
my
just
goodness.
keep coming.
I love it. Let's start, for people that might have missed that first time you were here, did you always want to be a teacher?
Yeah, I have teachers in my life growing up, but both my parents really were advocates for reaching out to others. So my mom owned a dance studio and had people with special needs in a certain class, and my dad also did the same thing in his work. So I was always around empathy and understanding. I originally thought I'd be an architect because I thought they made a lot of money and I can kind of draw halfway decent, but didn't go that route. It was right before I chose my college. I was like, oh, I really enjoy just being with kids. Like, I'm a big kid myself, and that seems like a very natural fit. So went into teaching kind of on a whim, and it turned out to be one of the best choices I've ever made.
And we're going to get to, and you're going to meet one of the students that have been profoundly affected by Matt. Let me tell you a little bit, and I know you know a part of the story, but for the audience,
Oh, yeah.
The reason Matt was on the show a couple months ago, and the reason he's back, it's kind of funny. It was serendipitous, probably isn't the right word. You're a teacher, so you can insert a better word. But I was doing a commercial for a company on my radio show. And, when you do these commercials, you focus on the product.
Absolutely.
And I got this note, I got this email that said, Jace, we want you to focus on the shoes, but we're going to do this event with this author. Can you mention his event? And I'm being very honest with you. I'm like, how in the hell am I going to, in a 30-second commercial, talk about Birkenstocks and then throw in there, oh, by the way, go see this author that I don't know at this event. Anyway, it worked out great. So because I did my due diligence, I was like, well, I'm going to find out who this guy is. Yeah. And I ended up on your social media, like millions out there.
Yeah.
And I just instantly was like, I called Bjorn, our producer, and I said, we got to get this guy on the show.
Thank you.
Because as people saw in that first segment, I am a person profoundly affected by teachers. Mrs. Freeze, I just talked about. But there's one thing to go, so that's why Matt's here. Matt's back. But there's one thing to be a teacher, and there's another thing to go to get to Sticky Notes.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Very much by accident. So, my first book deal, which was that blue book over there, that was a book 15 years in the making. Like, I wrote it when I was 21, tried for 15 years to get the darn thing published. Just a story that's very long. But with Sticky Notes is when I started teaching, I had a mentor teacher, which a lot of teachers don't get. And he said, you need to reflect on every lesson, see what went well, what didn't go on, what to change. And I was 21 and I was really crunched for time at the end of the day, and I didn't really feel like I was getting anything of it. So I started just writing things down that my kids were doing in my classroom. And it started off with just like the silly things that kids said. Like, I remember the first thing that someone said, it's so inappropriate that I can't say it on air, but it was so funny. And I thought this will never be topped in my teaching career. And that was what started writing something down every day for the last 15 years of what's happened in my classroom. But, as I matured as an adult, so did the entries that I kept track of, all these stories.
The cliche kid, I'm sure you experience this daily, that what you just said as an example, kids do say the darndest things.
Absolutely.
Are you routinely surprised about what comes out of their mouth?
Yes, there hasn't been a thing that a kid has said where I've been like, that'll never be topped. Like, it always gets topped somehow.
Okay, so you have these notes, you have these sticky notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one thing to have those.
Yeah.
When did you had already had one book. Where did you, what was the catalyst to go, oh, you know what, this is a book. These notes that I'm keeping really for myself is a book. How did you get there?
Well, it was kind of by chance. So when I started promoting that blue book there, I had no social media following. It was like 50 people and my grandma. No one watched what I did. But when I went on leave from teaching to help promote these books, I thought, well, I need to start, growing social media to get myself out there if I want a chance to be an author. And I tried to think about what can I do that's easily repeatable that I also care a lot about. And I had all these stories that I'd never reflected on. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just tell a story. And so the first story I told went viral. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. But I had gone viral before in the Twin Cities, actually. I swirled water in a Target parking lot, drained the whole thing. I know, yeah.
Wait. We didn't cover this in the first interview.
No, we didn't.
Wait. What did you go? What did you do?
So it was on TikTok, and I was kind of experimenting with what I would do at the time. This is in maybe 2020, 2019. And it was in the Target parking lot in Bloomington. And the whole thing was flooded, but since I'm local, I know where the drain is. It's right in the middle. So I went and I started swirling my hand, and then the whole parking lot started swirling. You can find it and throw it up on
Oh no, photographer Eric will put it. If he's so good, we're probably rolling video of it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that went viral at 20 million views in a very short amount of time. And I tried to capitalize on the fame, some really embarrassing clips of me trying to recreate water videos. But what it really did teach me was when you go viral, all these companies and people just want to ride the coattails of temporary fame. They want to just use you to pitch product. And there's some companies that are better than others, but really what it taught me was to protect myself. So when I went viral with my first story on sticky notes on Instagram, I thought, I'm not going to do this again. It was too much stress. I kind of lost who I was. I'll just not tell another story. But since it seemed to be resonating positively, I was like, well, I'll tell another one. So a couple weeks later, I did another story. And every story after, for the next 15 stories, all were over 1 million views.
What were some of the, and again, we're going to talk to a student in a little bit. What were some common themes, Matt, that you heard in the comments? I always joke, avoid comments, but in your case, it's much different. What were some of the themes that you were routinely that maybe encouraged you to continue? Oh, this is resonating because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I think by my third story, what I really wanted people to understand is what teachers actually do. And what we do is we do deliver content and we facilitate learning, but we help kids grow in their personality and their character, and that's what I wanted people to see. And so when I started telling stories that don't really center me as the main character, it centers the kid, I think a lot of people saw themselves in these stories, and they really latched on to choices they've made. But maybe one of the more impactful things is when people say oh man, you remind me of this teacher I had. And all of these memories start to flood back in. And now as I've traveled to help promote that book, that's really what I find is when I tell a story, it seems to unlock other people's stories. And then they share with each other, and that's really what creates empathy and understanding, is when you get to see yourself in someone else's story.
I think we're in a period where, for reasons we won't go into, because it's very layered, most important conversations, wasn't being flipped there. But it's sometimes in social media, it's easy to quickly pick apart and criticize educators.
Yeah.
And so on that note, what do you think is the biggest misconception about the teaching profession or just teachers in general?
Yeah. That is a great question, and we could probably spend episodes.
Let me tell you, Matt. If this wasn't a goofy show, which we are, because it bothers me. I'm being honest, because of the segment you guys saw at the beginning of the show, because of Mrs. Freeze, because of you, and I have teachers in my life. I know that I wouldn't be sitting here. It's not hyperbole without Mrs. I would not be here. I just wouldn't.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest misconception?
I think right now is I really want people to understand that we are professionals, we are trained to help you and your kid. And I think that's the key thing is I'm not doing what I think is best for the kid in their whole being. I'm doing what is best for what you want as a parent too. I'm here to help you. And sometimes I think that gets misinterpreted into what I want the kid to do, but really this is a team effort. It's between me, the student, and the parent. And I think a lot of people pick that apart and assume that teachers are choosing a direction for a child when that's just not the case at all. We want the best for that entire family.
When was it that you started to, well, actually, let me ask you a kind of a goofy question, because we had serious and now let me go to goofy.
Okay.
What do your students think of because when we were, I'm older than you, but still, when you were small, younger too,
Small.
when you were wee, when people would go, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to do radio, or I want to be on TV.
Sure.
Now people go, you'll know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Now young folks go, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be, I don't want to be an influencer.
Yeah.
So I say that because what do your students, who are way hipper than you and I are, what do they think of your online fame? Is it weird for them to wrap their brain around?
It is. And I'm on leave right now, so I don't have kids in front of me. But at the time that things were going viral, I did. And I tried my best to bust some misconceptions. So a lot of people were like, oh, you must be getting a lot of money and you're going to go buy this and that. I'm like, that's not how this works, actually. And actually, it's very difficult to navigate. And so I would share with them.
And I have a flooded basement. See, I do watch you, yeah.
You do watch it, yeah. And so what I try and do is bring the reality of it to kids. And sometimes they're like, well, what are we all going to get? And I'm like, we are not going to get anything. Like, if anything, no one's getting something. But what I really want to show them is like, this can be a path for you, but it can't probably be your whole thing. It's not stable enough. And I want you to have.
And it's so fleeting.
It is so fleeting. And that's why I treat social media, for myself at least, is that this might go away at some point for me. And if it does, I don't know that I'll try and recreate it. I want this to be special and I want it to be genuine. And I think to maintain that, I can't chase fame. I can't chase these things that might help me become a better author or more prominent, but I just want it to be genuine. And to do that, you need to stay grounded.
We have about a minute left, so 2 quick questions.
Sure.
First, how is your basement?
My basement is finished, and it's I have a place to write.
Go watch Matt's. You'll see. Go on the Instagram. Go on. You'll see why I'm asking.
Yeah. So I actually have a desk to write at now. I've never have, and it's not just me and an IKEA chair upstairs.
Yeah.
So it's good.
And then my last one. Is it hard for you? You said you're on leave. I know you love what you do.
Yeah.
Is it weird? Is it weird not being in front of kids?
It took me a long time to figure out what absence I felt in my day, because I did feel lost for a while, and I really did figure out that it's the energy from kids that I'm missing the most. I miss just being immersed in all of their silliness and everything else. Yeah.
Well, one of those kids you're going to meet next. I talk about how I was influenced by a teacher. You're going to meet a young person influenced by this guy here. We'll be right back. Back in a moment.
Awesome.
Welcome back, everybody. A great conversation. My favorite things, favorite people of 2024. Author, hello, I'm Jason. Author and teacher, all around great guy, Matt Eicheldinger. And now let's introduce, this is Briana. Briana, thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
I've talked about you a lot in the last segment, a student. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it fair to say influenced by this guy next to you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we'll get into it in a minute, but Matt, tell the story. When did you have Briana in your class?
Sure. So in 2018, I moved districts and I went to Bloomington, and Briana was one of the first students in my class. And I'd say we got along quite well at the first beginning, and we had a great school year. But one of the reasons I know her best is she's not just my neighbor. She lives like maybe a mile away, which we found out, I think, after.
Yeah.
But she was very crucial in helping me promote my independently published book that then got picked up and became a New York Times bestseller. So really, when I think of like who really helped to make this book become like a thing, it's Briana and her family. It's pretty cool.
So let me ask the obvious question. How did your students, other than being better at social media than us older folks, how did Briana help you?
So I made a Kickstarter video when I independently published my book, and I wanted to include students who knew me as a person, because I didn't want to just pitch a product. I wanted people to understand like why I thought this was important, this book, and I wanted them to invest in me. And I knew that Briana and I got along really well, and also we just had a good relationship. I had helped her in various ways in school, and kids helped me too, like made my day happy. And why would I not want to include a kid in that process? And I was thankful that she did, and she's also a phenomenal actress. So I mean, it helps to have someone who enjoys being in front of a camera.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as a person that does this job, I appreciate you being great on camera. So let me ask you, let's talk now.
Yeah.
What is it, Briana, what is it about that guy right there? I know for me what makes a special teacher. I talked about it, as I said 100 times earlier in this broadcast. What is it about him that made him such a great teacher for you?
Well, to give some like background information, I came from a private school in 5th grade and I didn't have many friends and I was pretty bullied, and so I decided to move schools 6th grade. And I was really nervous going into this school, really scared about making friends, and I just didn't really have a good teacher to like talk to or get to know. And I was kind of like thrown work at me, and when I came to Mr. Ike's class, like all of his stuff that we did was very interactive, and he just truly cared about his students, and I could see that. He just really cared.
Let me relate to you on that because do your friends call you Bree?
Yeah.
Can I call you Bree?
Yeah, of course.
Bree, as someone that was bullied too, horrendously bullied, I know what that was like. And let me ask you if you and I are similar on this. Didn't you feel like, I felt like I had no allies, adult or otherwise?
Yes, exactly.
And no judgment on whatever school you went to, but I had great people in my school, but I felt like I had no allies. Did you feel that way?
Yes, exactly. I had like no adult even that I could really even go to.
And then did you feel differently pretty immediately about
Yes,
Mr. Ike?
Definitely. He was my first hour teacher, so like he was the first face I got to saw going into this new school, and he was just so welcoming, and I was just so happy.
Well, let me go to you because again, back to Mrs. Freeze, she picked up on it. You're a smart guy. You're trained to do this. Did you pick up on the fact that Bree might have been feeling that way?
Not really, because in 6th grade it's a transitional year. So kids come into school and everyone is kind of just like, who am I here? What am I going to be in this new place? And so you try and give kids time to transition and figure out what they want to be. We joke around that kids are trying on different hats. Am I going to be, in theater? Am I going to be the funny guy? Am I going to be the sports guy? Like, who am I going to be? And so really when I see all these kids enter my classroom, I really just want them to relax. And to relax, I think you need to establish a great classroom atmosphere. And what I do, at least in my own technique, is I am just kind of silly and I tell stories. And we do things that we get to know not just the material, but each other too. Because as soon as you create this environment where everyone knows each other and respects each other, then your shoulders drop and you can just be yourself.
What is it like, though? I mean, you hear, I know it's because you're a humble guy. Even my asking Bree the question of what is it about you that made you so special to her? Yeah. I could see you're like, oh God, you're a humble guy.
Yeah.
But come on, man, that has to feel great to hear what you just heard come from her.
Yeah, I mean, when we recorded the Kickstarter video, I think we were both crying,
Yeah.
weren't we? When we were talking to each other.
Definitely crying.
And so there's this, I think what people don't understand about being a teacher is you bond very quickly to kids, and it happens intensely, and it's for a very short amount of time. I only get 9 months with you, but in that time you treat the kids in your classroom like they're your kids and you want the best for them. So when you have a kid come back or even message you on Instagram and be like, oh, you made a huge impact, it's just like, oh, okay, I'm doing the right thing.
Did he help you? That's a great word, because again, I know the feeling. You're very tense in 6th grade. Oh, Lord have mercy. 6th grade should just be illegal. 6th and 7th grade. But did he help you? Did you immediately feel, you used the word relaxed. Yeah. Did you feel safe?
Yes, I did. I was super, like I said, super nervous going into this, and he actually helped me pursue my career of theater now. Now that I had his class, I became super confident in myself and just overall really relaxed.
He gave you a big fancy therapy term, a permission structure to be yourself.
Yes,
am I right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what Mrs. Freeze did for me. I did The Wizard of Oz because she realized, as I said earlier, that I didn't play with the other kids, and she created this program for me. Yeah. So again. You helped with that.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's easy to, as a teacher, it's easy for you to relax when you have great kids in class. That's what makes my day fun, is when you've got kids who are not just willing to work hard, but then they can be themselves, and then you just get to have, just a lot of fun together.
What do you want to do, ultimately?
I did just decide, I wanted to do graphic design. I was thinking about, theater as a career, but it's really hard to get into, and I really like digital online stuff, so I think something with graphic design or photography I'd really like to do.
I love all those things.
And who knows, maybe you'll be designing a book cover for me someday.
That's true.
Cool?
Yeah.
I mean, you do know an author, and well, now you know a TV host, so if we ever need a new logo, I'm just saying. More with Mr. Ike and Briana when we come back. Back in a moment. Welcome back. Our final moments, final minutes with Mr. Ike. Is that what your kids call you?
Yeah, for the most part. Fun fact though, the last name Eicheldinger in German translates to tree thingy, which is actually, I know, it's actually the...
It is not, Matt.
It is, and I don't know if you remember this, and then the tree thingy actually means acorn, the very top of the acorn. And so my students for the whole time have called me not Mr. Eicheldinger, it's usually Mr. Tree Thingy, Mr. Ike, or Mr. Acorn. I don't...
That is the best fun fact.
It is.
Mr. Tree Thingy. Okay. That's how we'll, when we end this segment, remind me, photographer Eric, goodbye to Mr. Tree Thingy.
Yeah.
Okay, other than Bree sitting here, I know this is like picking when people ask me like favorite interviews.
Sure.
Is there another story off the top of your head that you think about with some regularity? And you can see all these on Mr. Ike's socials, but is there one that pops out?
You know, there's quite a few. The one that pops up the most, and it's for two different reasons, is I think my 5th year teaching, I lost a student. They died in a horrific car accident, and I learned about that moment 5 minutes before the day started. And so I got a phone call from the uncle, because the student was overseas when it happened, and I was just devastated. It was a kid that I saw every single day. And as I'm processing, another kid walked through the door for the first kid of the day. And I wasn't crying. I was, I knew kids were coming. And he looked at me and he goes, "You always greet me at the door. You didn't today. What's wrong?" And he did. And that's why I remember that story. It's not just because of the close connection I had with the student who passed away, whose name was Tapasvi. It's the only real name I use in the book. But that student who came through the door is that's really what teaching is. It's getting to know each other on such a personal level that you understand what each other needs. Like, I hope my kids know what I need. I hope they know when I'm grumpy or when I'm too excited. Like, I want them to understand me as not just a teacher, but as a human.
How did you get through that day?
Not easily. We ended up telling our students the following day because we wanted to be ready for it. But my colleague and I, her name is Tanya, we spent a lot of time just reminiscing of that student. And, I have lost students before and since, but that particular day was really hard. But I really want to remember that moment, not just for the reason that she passed away, but just to elevate the relationship between student and teacher.
What's your favorite, do you have a favorite grade, like where kids are just the best?
Well, I've only taught 6th grade.
You've only taught 6? I did not know that.
Well,
okay.
I taught 7th grade the year before I went on leave.
I'm sorry that I said that 6th grade should be illegal a few minutes ago. It's just for my own personal. Yeah. Did you hate? I mean, no, you had Mr. Tree Thingy, but if you didn't have Mr. Tree Thingy, 6th grade is pretty horrible.
Yeah,
Brie, right?
It was pretty much my favorite year. If I'm gonna be honest, it was probably my favorite year just because of him. Yeah.
But take Tree Thingy out of it, it's horrible.
Yes.
Sorry, kids in 5th grade getting ready to go to 6th grade. But it's and if it's good for you, you are right. You're very lucky.
You're going to be fine, students.
You're going to be. Yeah, I don't mean to scare the kids watching the Jason show, but no.
Yeah, it's an awkward stage of life, and so what I think I'm really good at is I think I'm decent at facilitating learning. But the principal who hired me when I was 21 at the time, which I can't believe they would let a 21-year-old be in charge of a whole class of adolescents. But at the time, he goes, "Do you know why I hired you?" And I was like, "I have no idea." he goes, "I can teach people how to teach, but I cannot teach them how to connect with people. And I see that in you, and that's why you're going to be a good teacher." So that's what I've ran with my whole career. Is like, oh, that's what I'm good at. I guess I'll just stay in that lane. Yeah.
Let me. In our last moment, I sometimes start or finish an interview with a compliment. Yeah. You set me up perfectly because let me say, I see what that principal saw.
Oh, thank you.
And truly, that's why you're one of my favorite guests of the season, probably one of my favorite guests of the 10 years of the show.
Oh, geez, good grief.
It's very true. Take it in because it's, you can tell immediately. So thank you.
No,
thank you very much for what you do for kids. Thank you for being
Yes,
here.
of course.
You're going to be great. I've had people 3 times your age be nervous and clam up. You're great on camera. You're going to do fine. You can find all these books. Here they are. We'll put links on our social media. And don't forget to follow Mr. Tree Thingy on socials. We'll be right back.